Okay, dear participants, time to start our last subtopic to go into one more discussion, which is called Empowering Communities Partnerships for Access to Services. And I'm really happy to know that moderator is one more Lithuanian, Artūras Piliponis, partner at EY Advisory Services Practice. So, Artūras, stage is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, dear panelists, dear participants. I see that it was quite an intense, hectic day, and only the strongest and the most committed stayed. So congratulations to you. I hope we will discuss something which will be of value for you. Before we start, I'd like to introduce our panelist. I wanted to start from the one who is joining online, but I don't see him. Can you put, please? So, not yet. Okay. I'd like to introduce our first panelist online, Mr. Lasse Heidemann. Mr. Lasse is a Senior Director for Outreach at Digital Europe. And before joining Digital Europe, Mr. Lasse served as a Senior Director for UN International Affairs at the Danish Chamber of Commerce, worked at multiple senior roles at Danish institutions, as well as European Commission, DG Sanko, if I understand it right, and as well at the private consultancy. So has quite a rounded experience, and hopefully will share it with us today. Our next participant is Valentina Stadnis, who currently serves as a program officer at the ITU office. Previously, Valentina was active ecosystem builder of IT sector in Moldova. From what I know, you were leading the IT park, which is a very big catalyst of IT sector in Moldova, and as well were in several senior governmental positions. So good to have you, Valentina, with us today. Our next participants, and I'm trying to do a gender balance, so just shifting, is Mr. Manuel Costa Cabral, is a senior consultant at ANACOM, the regulatory authority for electronic communications in Portugal, where Mr. Manuel mainly involved in digital governance issues. And previously, Mr. Manuel was having different leading roles at the Cabinet of the Secretary of State for Digitalization and Administrative Modernization at Portuguese government, at ITU, and as well at European Commission. Good to have you here. And our last participant, Lithuanian, Ms. Ieva Zilionenė. Ieva is a very experienced expert in digital field, digital policy and strategy, and was quite involved, or is quite involved, in different GovTech matters. Ieva was part of Lithuanian Government Information Society Development Committee, and as well telecom regulator, where very actively contributed to the digital developments of the country. And one last thing to mention, Ieva is a national expert and a member of the board of directors for the World Summit Awards. So, as you can see, our panelists are very diverse and bring a very, very interesting experience to us today. Before we jump into questions, I'd like to share our topic, as you could see, is partnership for access to services. So it's about the connectivity, it's about the services itself, it's about the skills. So it's not just pure networks and connectivity, so rather broad. But before we get into the questions, I'd like to share some reflections which I have from the time when the war in Ukraine has started. And I have quite a few colleagues, I have quite a few friends there. And when Russians started bombing Kiev, I was in daily contacts with them, and the feedbacks were very diverse. First of all, when you cut the heating, it's cold, it's bad. Yeah. When the water is cut and you are you live in multi-story building is super bad. Yeah, you can imagine. But the worst thing is when electricity and access to internet is cut, because you lose the information, you don't know what is happening, and it's very not only physical but it's emotional impact. So in addition to the fact that we more and more move into the digital world, where we are not only communicate and make friends digitally but as well do business, so those who have access, who are more advanced, they achieve more, and unfortunately there are groups which are left behind. So the topic is how we can make sure that through partnership we go as a team and no one is left behind, or at least at a great scale. That was the intro, and I'd like to start from the first question, the scene setting on the connectivity. So where do we stand now? So Europe aims to have 100 megabit per second connectivity by 2025, gigabit connectivity by 2030. So what is the progress to date? What are the challenges? And the first question is to Mr. Lasse. Please.
Thank you, and thank you a lot for, I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
I see nodding. Excellent. Yes, so thank you very much for inviting Digital Europe to speak here as this great event. We're very grateful. Now for the implementation of the digital decade, so we're looking at the gigabit for everyone in 2030. This is also reflected in our manifesto, I can say, so we are working towards the same goal, and we definitely need a boost in terms of where we are right now. In terms of wireless 5G, Europe is lagging behind. We have 80% population-wise, whereas the US has 98, South Korea has 98, the Japanese has 98, China has 89. So we are not looking good in terms of where we are going right now. The main challenges appears to be a weaker investment climate, both in terms of capital and in terms of the possible return on investment. Then we have, as always in Europe, regulatory fragmentation, which continues to be a problem. It's both for authorization, the spectrum management, and other issues that are problematic there. And then what we see is that there is basically a lack, this results in, I should say, a lack of commercial interest. Even with subsidized middle mile, we have trouble getting all the way out to the actual consumers, and thus ensuring that we have the connectivity that we're looking for.
Thank you. Thank you. So the message, what I take is that despite us being Europe, developed countries, we still have a gap, and we still have an effort to put to close that gap. Moving further, and the question goes to Valentina. How does internet access differ in non-EU countries, more like developing countries? I know that ITU has these goals for universal and meaningful connectivity. So can you elaborate on them as well? What are they, and how you apply them?
Yeah, thank you so much. To be honest, since I'm representing the Europe region of the ITU office for Europe, I am really glad to see the progress that is happening in EU countries and European countries per se, but to bring a little bit of a contrast into the picture, I'm going to repeat one number that has been already mentioned during yesterday's sessions, is that only 67% of the population currently globally is using the internet. So the scale and the type of the problems that different countries are facing are extremely different. And saying that, I can also bring into the picture the divide between an urban and rural. And in that sense, the high-income countries have almost closed the gap. while the low-income countries are still struggling, and in the low-income countries, only 1 out of 5 citizens is using the internet. And also, another important point here is the affordability of the internet, because Europe is actually doing the best in that sense. And when it comes to the other countries, like lower middle-income countries, we see that the gap is way bigger. In that sense, the ITU is measuring that indicator as a percentage of GNI per capita. So when we are speaking, for example, about mobile broadband connectivity and mobile broadband basket, the affordability of it is 5.5 times lower in the lower middle income countries and almost 20 times lower in the low income countries. And we are not even speaking about the fixed broadband, because in cases it actually exists, there are situations in which it can reach 1/3 of the monthly income. So as you could see, the scale and the difference of problems that the world is facing is pretty dramatic. And saying that, I should go back to the, I guess, to the reference that was made earlier in terms of the ITU goal, ambitious, I would say, to ensure the universal meaningful connectivity by 2030. And we are actively working on that. We are streamlining the regulatory frameworks and working with the countries to ensure the necessary competition levels and to lower the costs and to improve the affordability of internet. We are working on the on promoting different capacity building initiatives, and as well as promoting the cooperation in order to streamline the investments, and also like to transfer the knowledge. So I see it's 0 on the display, so I think I need to stop here. So thank you so much.
Thank you. So my takeaway from this comparison is that, yes, in Europe, maybe we are not doing as well as our goals are, or compared to some other developed countries, but still there are regions and countries around the world which are much, much worse and have much bigger challenges. And a question to Eva. We live in very agile times of floods, wars, and crisis. So how is that affect access to the internet, to the connectivity?
So yeah, I think we all saw ourselves several years ago, and time flies really. But when COVID hit, we really appreciated the power of technology, I think, in a new way. Then from something just nice to have, it became something which was needed to survive. And working these days in the Communications Regulatory Authority of Lithuania, I remember very well when very, very quickly we had to be very agile, yeah. And to reinvent or to invent different ways, and to consult and to help different institutions and schools and pupils and parents how to adjust. And of course, war in Ukraine is another example of how digital becomes like very, very important, and a way to keep in touch with your citizens even when they are abroad. But now working in the global consultancy and other companies, which I have a possibility to see examples from very different countries, I think the Caribbean is very interesting part of the world. And I think double effect happened there. First of all, we had a couple of very devastating hurricanes in 2017, Maria, Irma. After that, COVID hit, and suddenly the digital became very important for countries which before that didn't pay too much attention. And what's happening there, it's a lots and lots of transformation when digital needs and putting like connectivity and as well putting services online became like one of the most important things in the agenda of a government, and working in such countries like Dominica, like St. Martin, like Trinidad and Tobago and others.
usually when governments or institutions solve for themselves, what it means when you lose access to your paper records, what it means when people cannot come into the institution or to some physical service centers, but they still have to have the social benefits, they still have to have some way to register birth or to get some certificates, so digital becomes very, very important. Or another example from Samoa Island, where we helped to prepare for them to build the civil registry, because the island, due to climate change and with diverse effects, is literally sinking. So just to know who are your citizens becomes priority. So I think we will be facing more and more things which are very difficult to predict now. And of course, being prepared and have good examples how to employ smartly technology for that can really be a game changer.
Thank you. Very interesting stories. I'm sure we could dive into them even more. Now we looked at what we have as situation in terms of the goals, in terms of the examples. I'd like to dive a bit more into the practical developments and good practices and to hear from you. And the first, again, question goes to Valentina. The question is, how do United Nations led initiatives like Broadband Commission or GIGA contribute to achieving universal internet connectivity? Maybe there are others which you could share as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think linking to the previous intervention, I would like to also mention the support and the activities that we're having in Ukraine. So ITU is currently leading the rehabilitation of 10 broadcasting stations, which cover 10 million people. So it's quite an extensive portfolio that I would say that we're managing at this point. And we also see the value in this kind of interventions in the areas where there is a conflict. Speaking about the GIGA and about the Broadband Commission, of course, they're driving the universal connectivity forward. They do have an immense potential due to the synergies that they're creating. Of course, the legislative work and the advocacy that the Broadband Commission brings to the table is being amplified at the national level through the GIGA initiative and connecting the schools. And so it creates a multi-level engagement. And of course, the innovations are being driven through these initiatives by making sure that new approaches, new financial streams are being identified, new mechanisms are being leveraged to promote this connectivity at the national levels. And probably the last thing is the leveraging of the global networks and building on the strengths of each and every stakeholder that is being involved in those initiatives is as important as the other components are. But not limiting only to this, I would like to also mention, for example, the activities that are being directed towards the broadband mapping. And here the work is being done to make sure that the informed decisions are being done in terms of the growth of the networks and improvement of the connectivity. And this work is happening in Europe as well, because in our understanding, Europe is not only EU, but it's 46 countries, including the Eastern Europe and Western Balkans. So that work is being directed not only towards those countries, but also beyond the Europe and in relation to the exchange of knowledge and expertise of the European countries in that sense and the African continent. So a lot of things are happening in that sense. And probably one of the last points that I would also like to mention, and it's related to the first intervention, we're also working on the 5G connectivity and the work with particularly, for example, Western Balkan countries on that element. So as you can see, there are a lot of initiatives which somehow have their particular goals, but which build upon each other and have at the end the kind of a very synergic approach towards the advancement in that sense. So thank you.
Thank you. It sounds like there are quite a few initiatives. I'm sure they cost not €1,000. So later on, we will dive a bit in what it would take to kind of to close the gap in terms of the resources. Now moving to Mr. Manuel, the question is for you. What roles regulator, you are from regulator and government institutions partnering potentially with other players like private players play in closing digital device? Maybe you could share some success stories, examples of good initiatives as Valentina shared as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot for inviting, for participating in this panel, and thanks for the hosts, RRT, for brilliantly hosting us and bringing us here to the beautiful city of Vilnius. So going to your question, we at Anacom, regulator, we are perfectly aware that the connectivity is a foundation layer, let's say, of all this digital world. And so without this digital layer that we have on connectivity, we cannot have the rest, all the benefits that this digital economy is bringing us and to the society and so on. So for us, the electronic communications network is truly important, and we are perfectly aware of our responsibilities on that. In Portugal, I can tell you that we are glad and we can be proud of what we achieved in terms of coverage, both in fixed and mobile networks. We are doing well in terms of fixed high-level, high-speed networks, and also including fiber. We have around 93% of the buildings and establishments already connected to fiber networks. Also on 5G, the rollout of networks is quite positive, and we are satisfied what we have achieved so far. However, we still have some challenges, of course. In some regions, the coverage is not so good as we wished. So there is some disparities and differences in how regions are, sorry about that, our regions are connected. Also, we feel that part of the population is still not so much connected, given the digital literacy issue and also income. So we are having some initiatives to address these challenges that we still have. I'll give you 4 concrete initiatives. I could talk about more, but I think 4 of them are quite relevant. One is a tender, a public tender financed by public money and the EU money to cover the regions where there is a lack of high-speed networks. So we were working on that, and we are the tender is open, so we are waiting for it to conclude. Secondly, the 5G auction, where we had some requirements and some provisions that included the coverage of rural areas. So in order to bridge that gap. Also, we created a social tariff for low-income people and also people with special needs. This this tariff is €5 a month plus VAT, so it's very, very convenient, a very good price, I would say. And also a flagship project we have, which is a submarine cable system connecting our autonomous regions of Açores and Madeira and our mainland continent. This is a very important and relevant system for connecting these regions, autonomous regions. Yeah.
Super, thank you. I think there were a few good thoughts, kind of few good examples of how those getting the spectrum should be incentivized to do a bit more than just using it, or the social tariff as well, a very nice example. And knowing that Anacom is one of the best examples in Europe, at least as to as per my knowledge, in how regulators are run, how the markets are managed. You shared what you do in Portugal. Maybe a few words, but just few words. What you do outside the Portugal in other countries, less developed countries. Are there any good examples for the audience to hear?
Thanks for the question. I think we have a strong intervention, let's say, cooperation in a number of countries, regions, well, including Ukraine. When the war started, we set a protocol with Ukraine, the regulator, also to provide assistance and support and whatever we could. But where we normally attach our attention in terms of cooperation with foreign countries is the Portuguese-speaking countries. So the Portuguese-speaking community is quite broad. It has 250 million people speaking Portuguese, so it's spread in 4 continents, and we are proud that it's one of the most used languages in the world, in the internet as well, of course, and so we dedicate a lot of attention to our sister regulatory authorities in Portuguese-speaking countries. Particularly in Africa and Asia, we have a very strong cooperation with them in terms of assistance. We set up a number of protocols with them, and we want to address some of the issues that Valentino was talking about, some of the concerns that they have. We set up a number of capacity building projects, a number of initiatives in terms of provision of information, also consulting services, and also going to the field. That is something that we like to go there. So to have these programs in the field implemented, even providing with equipments and so on, so concrete things that we can try to help whatever we can in order to bridge this divide. So, and just to illustrate about what we are doing, the capacity building programs, we cover basically everything on these capacity building programs in Africa and Asia. From the organization, how the accounting is put in place, the financing, human resources, but also then the concrete stuff of what regulators do, economic of regulation, the spectrum management, consumer protection, security, and so on. So we have a broad range of, let's say, activities that we dedicate a lot of effort and a lot of resources to support these initiatives. Thank you.
Super, thank you. Thank you. I think these were nice examples. I'd like a bit to challenge Mr. Lasse and Eva. You know, I work myself with the connectivity and the mapping exercises, and you know, there is this nice idea that if you attract private sector into these initiatives, they will invest their money and everything could be better. Yeah. So, question to you both in terms of these partnerships and examples. Can you share some of the examples where maybe private sector plays a role, not just because they are paid because of the tender, but you know, there are some mechanism which incentivizes as well to private sector to engage. So I don't know whoever wants to go first, but Mr. Lasse, maybe you could.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I mean, here we are looking to bridge the digital divide as well as everywhere else, right? To make sure that we can extend the connectivity to the less attractive rural areas. In our experience, the only way that can happen is that all the players collaborate, right? So one example could be public funding for the middle or the last mile rollout where there's no commercial interest. This is like one way of going about it. The timely allocation of spectrum for wireless connectivity at a reasonable price, that might be a way out. Many member states have used RFF funding, so the big fund that came after the COVID epidemic, to extend or to fund middle and last mile connectivity. And that is also something that might be seen in future financing. Let's see what the next mandate comes with. There's opportunity to use satellite-based connectivity in programs to complement some of the other activities, especially where it's very hard to reach areas. We do have those in Europe, even though we're quite concentrated. Of course, companies can share the infrastructure. So infrastructure sharing can be an opportunity to help. It is complicated, but it can be very good when it works. And the last thing I wanted to mention is the necessary skills to be able to provide all these solutions. We have a lack of employees in Europe, and these skills also will be lacking. So we need to make sure that the skills are available. And there can be different ways of going about it. Some of it can come from Brussels, but mostly the member states have competence in making sure that the skills are indeed available.
Yes, and coming to some examples from my experience, I'd say. So, yeah, I think we know and hear quite a lot about different PPP projects, and it will become a trend, but only in areas where there is profitability, I guess, because business is business. That's the nature of it. So there are interesting examples, I guess, for big projects, and I guess each country now is trying to see how to make this work for different kinds of projects. But coming back to practical examples, I think very interesting one I have from very interesting encounter we had in International Telecommunication Union World Summit on Information Society last year, where I was part of Lithuania delegation of our politicians, our public institutions, and as well businesses. And we had lots of meetings with different countries. And during the meeting with Kenya's delegation, it was very interesting exchange on the best experience and pain points of the country. And one of the things that government is doing is putting like 10,000 of public services online, which is very ambitious. Another thing is that quite a lot of people just don't have access to digital. So that means that the divide is not decreasing, it's just actually increasing. And the idea that what came there was, so why not to try to see how to use the networks that already exist in the country, like in this case, postal networks, which again, each country's, it's a challenge, how to adjust a postal network with the really change habits of people. So how to use this well-established historical network to provide access to digital services to people living in rural areas. So Lithuanian government through this LT8 fund is financing, and energy companies is co-financing a project in Kenya based on seeing the best practices from Europe, including from Lithuania, from other countries, and seeing how to merge these experiences into something meaningful, how to use the assets which the government already knows, has in new ways. So I guess sometimes being creative really pays off, and this creativity, yes, it can come not just from government, but from private sector as well.
Super. Thank you. Very relevant example. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's nice. It's not because it's just hard connectivity, because, you know, when going to the postal office, you assumingly will get a service, advice, and guidance, and therefore you will be upskilled and better usage. And maybe reflection on AI, on AI topic, because people say that we are shrinking and labor force is reducing. On the other hand, we are saying that AI is taking our jobs, which is not bad, maybe, not so bad for Europe if AI takes the jobs which are currently cannot be filled by a human, then it's a very good thing. The only problem is that many people not having the right access to the internet, or not having the ability and skills to be part of that game, of course, are left behind. And that's a clear challenge. Okay, maybe it's time for some questions from audience, if there are any. Do we have any questions? Yeah, we have online questions.
I will be quickly. And a short question from Amélie de Silva Mitchell. What is the role of civil society? And I do have Nope, I did have a raised hand, but no.
That's okay.
longer.
Let's go deal with this question. What is the role of civil society? Who wants to take this question?
I can take it with the concrete example. Since we started talking about the meaningful part of the connectivity, I would like to bring to the table the experience that we had in ITU with the GovTech initiative. It's an initiative built and launched together with the government of Estonia, Germany, and the Dial Foundation. So there is a multi-stakeholder approach in its greater sense, I would say, involving also the all of this type of the stakeholders into the development of the right thinking towards the public services development, but also the community which builds itself the efficient and cost-effective mechanism for the public services delivery. So it is based on the building block approach and promotes a very I would say a very strategic way of addressing the services development by reuse of the already existing codes instead of just reinventing yourself all the time. And it has a very strong citizen-centric component as well, being seen across all of the streams of the activity of this initiative. That would include the capacity building exercise and empowerment of the women in a GovTech. It also goes into the knowledge sharing and the platform that has been built with the courses currently located on Atingi to promote the knowledge about the digital services development, and also it goes into the involvement of the community into the development of the specifications even that currently end up being part of the global sandbox to which everyone has an access and can experiment, build their own services regardless of their capacities in the sense of the technical knowledge. So everyone can create their own understanding or foster their own understanding of the digital services and can contribute with their own bits and pieces to the process. So I don't know if that's answering the question, but that was my take on it.
Thank you. Nice examples. Eva, anything or others to add? If not, I can share, just building on what you said. You mentioned the Tingi. As EY, we are dealing with digitalization topics as well. And we just recently launched an e-commerce course, badge actually, on a Tingi for Ukraine, Moldova, and we are moving to Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Georgia. And this is how to do e-commerce on new marketplaces. One may think, it's very easy, it's this e-commerce all over, but if you want to find the real quality material which guides you and lets you understand tax matters, legal matters, the process, there is none. And what was funny, because I think it's an open platform, you put there, anyone can access, the first person completed the course for Ukrainians was Nigerian, which just shows how global the world is, but at the same time that the interest in closing this knowledge gap, skills gap is big. Any other question? Yes? Do we have?
Thank you so much. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the informative and the thought-provoking panel. I just want to find out two things. For developing and low economics, what should we do to achieve the meaningful connectivity to bridge the digital divide? More so that where I am, we have like two economies, the first and the second economy. So you have the large number of the people in the second economy, and they do not have meaningful access to connectivity. So the digital divide is widening instead of closing. So I would just want to understand, as developing and low economies, what is it that we should be doing to achieve meaningful connectivity, and to mean it when we say leaving no one behind, because many people are being left behind in terms of participating in the digital economy. And the second thing I just want to know, how do we make partnership work to build digital inclusivity for all, including those from rural areas? I believe that as long as these PPPs are about profit, the vision for digital inclusion might be continuing to be elusive, because if it's about profits, then there is no point in going to rural areas, which is, I'm coming from one of the rural areas in South Africa, and connectivity there is bad. So I have better connectivity when I'm in the city, like right now. But if I was at home at the village, I would not have been able to connect actually to this event. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Who would like to take these questions?
I can start maybe from national perspective, but I'm sure that my colleagues will have plenty to add. But I think the questions are very, very broad and very, very difficult. And I guess if someone had all the answers, there won't be need for us to sit here and discuss. But usually what happens that each country has a very different context, of course. But even in Lithuania, like 15 years ago, we had this challenge that perfect connectivity in the cities and really bad connectivity in rural areas. So yes, we are not that big, but still it was a very clear policy of the state to invest in these areas which are not commercially attractive. Specifically, there is no profit for operators, there is no interest to go, and Lithuania was one of the first countries to invest into building this backbone network, connecting rural areas, fiber network, which was then possible to use to all operators on equal rights and to make the coming to these rural areas much cheaper. And Lithuania still continues to do that with different technology, with different approaches. But this is one of the ways among many. But of course, that requests that the government still takes a stand and thinks, this is important for us and we must do something. And there are, of course, different scenarios for that.
Yeah, thank you. I can also develop on this. Of course, it's a difficult question to reply to. But anyway, I think we during this EuroDIG we have listened to some perspectives that at least give us hope that we are doing something and we can achieve something. Of course, a lot was done already in terms of connecting the world, but a lot of it has to be done yet. So I was pleased to listen to ITU that has recently, I guess, set up a financing protocol with the World Bank and other institutions that in order to get to the proper financing to connecting developing regions. Also, we heard a number of technologies, well, including satellites, including submarine cables, that are providing solutions to make connectivity more affordable and with a larger capacity. Also, from our side, what Portugal is doing, I think, is also a great example, you know, to collaborate, to give the best of our knowledge, the best of our expertise, to bring that expertise also to the field, and with concrete projects, concrete examples. I think it's also that all of us can collaborate a little bit on that. And all things combined, I hope that we can continue to make improvements. Thank you. That's an optimistic note, I hope.
Yes, I'll try to be brief. I see that people are already coming to rush us a little bit. I would just like to say that I fully agree with my fellow speakers here. It's very difficult to drive the change from the outside. You have to have the driving force inside the country, and frequently this role is supposed to be taken by the government. One thing that is not less important is the creation of the right ecosystem and involvement of all of the stakeholders in the process. Of course, when we are talking only about connectivity, that narrows a little bit the type of the stakeholders that we're aiming to involve. But when it comes to the involvement and driving the change at the larger scale, we have to look at all of the type of the stakeholders, and at the same time look at the building of the ecosystem, on entrepreneurial ecosystem, on innovation ecosystem, to just make sure that that change, which we are speaking about, even in terms of connectivity, is actually having a perspective of evolving into the competitive advantages for the country as well, because it's not only about the access to the network, it's also what people will be doing further with the network once it's there. So, of course, partnerships at the international level are super efficient to kind of motivate and drive that change. But as I said, it's all starting inside the country and with the drive that is being kind of that is growing from bottom up, I would say. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lasse, would you have any?
30 seconds.
30 seconds. Okay, so probably we don't have much, but the topic is so wide we could continue for a few hours easily. Maybe a few takeaways. First of all, a lot is being done, as we can hear, very, very nice examples on developments, but unfortunately, and most probably, the gap is widening. And the thought for all of us to think, so how much resources, efforts, or initiative needs to be put in order to reverse that trend and really not to leave people behind, those who cannot go together. So it's the question about the money, it's about the political will, and about the partnership, and as you rightfully said, it's initiative from the bottom. Thank you, dear panelists. Thank you, audience. For some reason, we have more listeners than we started, which is great. So thank you. I enjoyed the discussion and looking forward to have a good time.
Thank you, Artūras and the team.